Well, my guest today is Jo Vadillo. Now, Jo is a well-respected voice in the property industry. She is an author, a professional property buyer's agent, and provides coaching services to property buyers. Now, Jo launched the buyer's agency Advocate Property Services in 2011 to help property purchasers secure great deals seamlessly. She is also the CEO of Property Women, an educational platform that supports and advocates for female investors. With more than 20 years of being an active investor herself, Jo really understands the buyer's journey and shares her wealth of knowledge and experience to support her clients in their quest for property success. Welcome to Pitch Perfect, Jo Vadillo.
Oh, thanks, Jamie. Thanks for the wrap and coming into that and talking about, when you say 20 years of experience, it kind of makes you sound a little old.
I always use that. I always say 2 decades of experience.
2 decades. Yeah, but
it's absolutely. I think it does make you sound certainly at least 40.
Yeah. I've had that.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I didn't mention in that bio is I think you have one of, if not the best personality of any human I've ever met. And you instantly warm to you. And I can see for someone like yourself who you're dealing with clients and potential clients, and it involves having conversations with all different stakeholders every day. I'm sure that personality has been a bit of a key to your success, would you say, without embarrassing you?
I feel like now I need to really up the ante and come in with some like really big charismatic spiel, because now you've set me up for failure. But I guess it's a good point. Within certain industries, having the ability to mingle with lots of different personalities types. I'm a pretty natural communicator, so that certainly helps. As a buyer's agent, I'm speaking to, high-end, solicitors, my clients' accountants. I'm liaising with their brokers, obviously agents, selling agents. There's so many people. Buyer's agents are like the center of the nucleus of the buying journey. So you are dealing with many different moving parts. And sometimes it's even just, we talk to the vendors directly in some situations with off-market deals and things like that. So you really need to be able to shift gears and change the way you articulate yourself. So it does help being slightly, I call myself an introverted extrovert. I think it's an omnivert could be another way of describing myself. As I get older, I'm quite happy to be in my own space and place, but I do naturally gravitate towards being around humans a lot, and I find it easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Can tell you do. So many questions. I mean, I, for one, only really got onto this concept of buyer's agents about 2 years ago. And a friend of mine was living in Tamworth in New South Wales and was trying to find a property in Newcastle. And she kept coming every weekend to visit Newcastle and just couldn't get these properties, couldn't access them, couldn't even get a look in, and then engaged a buyer's agent. And I think at the time she said she paid, I don't know, it was 18, 20,000 or something, which I thought, wow, that's incredibly expensive. But then she said, no, we were able to shave that off the cost of this property. The buyer's agent was able to negotiate that. We were able to access a property we couldn't otherwise have had access to as a consumer. And so for me, I'm thinking now, whenever I buy a property in the future, I will always engage a buyer's agent. But for you, you've been doing this a lot longer than 2 years. So were you sort of being a buyer's agent, and especially a female buyer's agent, when there weren't a lot of buyer's agents around?
It was absolute infancy in terms of the industry in Australia, because it's very, very common to use the buyer's advocate. In America, that's a very commonplace buyer's broker. They've got different variations of that terminology, and a very different structure. But it's very typical to buy property in that way in the States. And also they share the commission of the selling agent. So it's a bit of a funny one. It's almost like whereas here it's like we've got a fiduciary duty to look after our clients, the purchaser, and the selling agent, he's there or she's there to protect and look after and get the best outcome for the seller of the property. So it's a bit of a weird dance coming together like that. So when I started out, I was working in advertising and marketing. That was my career, my previous career. And I just loved property. I loved everything about it. I was a complete junkie for it. I went to every live event that I could, put a bum on a seat for. Loved all the magazines back in the ye old days. I'd go, and when I bought my first property, I'd have like the, the news. Oh my gosh, this really dates me. Get a newspaper and circle the properties and go out there and have a look at it,
It
and
wasn't
that's
that
how
long ago, to be fair. It wasn't that long ago. We were all
back in
doing
the
that.
olden days. But this is how I started out. And there was also a TV series at that point with the lady from the UK called Sarah Beanie, and she still has a few different iterations of her things now on, I think, Foxtel or Netflix. But she did a lot of renovation programs. Like, she'll go in and speak to somebody about what they should and shouldn't do, and then they'd show the befores and afters and how much money they could make. And I was just like drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm like, this is just where I need to be. I love it. I love the bricks and mortar. I love everything about property. So when I had my second son, I re-educated, got the form, did all the formalities. I became a licensed real estate agent and started up the company as a buyer's agency. And Jamie, seriously, I spent the first 3 years of my company saying to people, what's a buyer's agent? And I was answering that question. Like, what's a buyer's agent do? Why would you need one of those? Why would you need it? Why would you pay someone to help you buy a property? But people use an expert to sell a property, but they'd blindly buy really poor investment standard stock. They'll go in and they wouldn't realize, they wouldn't do their due diligence. They didn't realize they're buying in a flood affected area. They didn't realize there's a council approval across the road for, a large, building that will throw shadow over the property they're in. Or they'd buy something because it's a really good rental return, but it hasn't had capital growth for 10 years. So this is the reason you pay an expert to buy a property for you, not only to save you money and do all the negotiations, but to do all that due diligence. So you're not buying yourself a lemon that's going to do nothing except hold you back from progressing further.
Yeah, of course. And I suppose you are living, breathing, sleeping property, talking to agents all the time. So you are the expert in that industry, which is really great. And that's why you would use a buyer's agent. Let's go back there to when you first started and, being a PR gal. I'd love to know what you kind of used as your avenue to become known in not only an industry which was in its infancy, but also as an unknown profile yourself. Did you sort of advertise in the local newspaper? What sort of things did you do from a PR and marketing perspective?
Really to start out, got the website up and running, registered the business name, did all the back end machinations, but then it's like, right, the shop's open, but no one's coming to the front door. So I did really what you're meant to do, and that is network. So I did attend B&I events here in Sydney, and I was just a fish out of water. I was like, well, I've got to like stand up and tell people what I do, and honestly, from that, I got one client. She wound up buying 3 properties through us, and I'm still in contact with her today. And it was just that started the momentum, and then they told their friends, and then I reached out to people in the industry like brokers, who at that point, again, I guess I had that benefit of being a niche in a niche market. Not only was there hardly anyone being a buyer's agent, but there was just no females in that space as well. So the other benefit I had was leveraging off free media, contacting, like, basically, but then I started getting not only contact to put my hand up to actually write articles, but then they all started contacting me. So they were asking me for, let's just bite-sized comments on different things that were happening in the industry. And back then there was a big appetite for people buying magazines in the property space. And this just continued the momentum and opened more doors. So in actual fact, for my journey as a business owner, I've actually invested very little financially into marketing. I haven't had to, because I've got that momentum. And a lot of my business even today comes from past clients, repeat clients, and also a lot of industry professionals that I've worked with over time that will say, yeah, I've got a client looking to buy a duplex in Brisbane. Can you help them out? I'm like, bring it. I'm here to help.
Oh, so you don't just do Sydney, you do other areas. Wow.
I've even Newcastle. I've done bus tours with all these Sydney shoppers and gone to Newcastle. So definitely we've bought in almost every state. I'm just thinking I haven't bought in Northern Territory. But we do a lot of activity. Southeast Queensland is a big one for us as well. We've got people on the ground that do the physical inspections. I'm personally really active in that space. I've done a couple of property developments in the last 2 years there myself, a building there again now. And so Sydney market owner occupiers, that's really where my strength is. But when it comes to investors, and we've got different levels of our business as well. So not always, our clients will sometimes do the physical inspections, but we charge them a lighter service to do all the due diligence and find off-market deals for them as well. So a lot of that can be a desktop scenario, and I just pick up the phone and it's talking to people all day, every day. Like, it really is just building that rapport with agents. What have you got off market? What can you do? How can we make this deal work? And that's really what we do.
So those kind of that tactic where you sort of looked at the free media side, is that something that you still kind of adopt in your business in 2023? Are you still, wanting to put yourself out there in the media, all those techniques? I mean, obviously magazines they're still around, but they're not as popular. But, there's online media and there's still TV and there's still radio and there's podcasts, all that sort of thing. Is that something which you kind of still follow along and are constantly nurturing from a marketing perspective?
Probably not nurturing as much as I could or should. So I still get those organic comments. So from like a representative from Domain would contact me, or Sydney Morning Herald. So I do still get those phone calls that do come through. Look, we're looking for a voice in the industry to comment on this. But it doesn't take much as a business owner. It doesn't take much to open those doors. Journalists are looking for people to quote on these scenarios, or to provide content for them, tell them what's going on in the industry. And I think sometimes I've gotten lost in just being very busy doing the service side of my business, that I haven't always nurtured the marketing side as well as I could or should. But the reality is I still loosely do, but I think you always need to ramp it up. You don't want to be the best kept secret. And the fact absolutely. Is what I've got up my sleeve that other people don't have is all that time, that longevity in the industry, in the space. And also I'm an active investor myself. So I've done a lot of the things that my clients want to do. So I'm not coming at it like, hey, I'm fresh out of school and look at me with my buyer's agency opened up and ready to go. Like, I've bought into State, I've bought in my self-managed super fund, I've bought into Strata, I've built brand new duplexes. I own, properties. I've renovated about 10 properties to add value and then use the equity to buy again. I've done capital raising, property developments. So I've done a lot of the things. I understand the momentum, the fear, the joys, challenges, like trying to find solutions. In actual fact, at the moment, even this week, the irony is this week I have to do what I do for my clients, and I just don't want to. You're like, I don't want to be an adult this week because I'm building in Sydney. And I'm just like, who do I need to pay off to get these, surveyor reports done so my pool can get started? So that's what I do for my clients. I do all the hurt work. I'm the one that actually chases people for answers. What's going on? Where's the contractor sale? Where's the strata report? That's my job. But when I'm doing it for myself, it's not so much fun.
Oh, yeah, it's like that old story, isn't it? Yeah, it's even myself. I teach people how to get paid speaking gigs, and I get so busy doing that I forget about getting my own paid speaking gig. So I totally relate. And you are a member of PR Club, and you are the perfect sort of PR Club member because it is for time poor business owners. And sometimes you just need that kick up the butt because you could reach out on Source Bottle, or you could put out a pitch to a media organization pitching yourself, or go on podcasts, or all the different avenues, get some more speaking gigs, networking, that sort of stuff. But sometimes you just need that kick up the butt. This is what we're focusing on this month. You get so busy in your business, and it's easy to sort of not forget, but not prioritize that traditional media and PR side of things. Let me talk about property women, because we were chatting before we started, and you said you literally were attending their events, and then a couple of years later, was it, that you decided to buy the business? How did that all come about?
I was literally, and I think my second son at this point I think I might have been pregnant. I would have been pregnant. I look at the time scale, I would have been pregnant at the time. And that industry of events was still very much, people were quite happy to pay whatever they need to do to get, a seat at the table, so to speak. Whereas now you know, that industry shuffled around a little bit, and a lot of people were sitting on, you know, webinars and all the rest. But back in the olden days, this 2009 event was on, and I think I literally Googled women in property or some sort of combination of that, because none of my friends, my most beautiful long-term friends, are remotely interested in property in the same way I am. It's almost like I've got this amazing hobby and I'm, you know, a total nerd for it. And I had no one around me was talking. I want to talk about renovations to people, you know, like real. So I literally did this Google, and lo and behold, about 48 hours later, they're going to hold this big event in Sydney. Never heard of them before. And it was $900 for this event. And that was an epic size sum of money for me to ever put on the table, especially when I was actually taking a break off work at that point. And I spoke to Greg, my husband, who works as a buyer. He always says he always says he's my employee. He's not. He's I am the director of the business, but he holds his own quite nicely as well. So, but he's super supportive, and I'd say the word lucky, but it's so important when you've got a spouse or, you know, your significant other that supports what you do, you know, cheers you on. And he said, just do it. Just go to this event. I went to this Property Women event. It was packed room full of women, you know, a series of different speakers. And I remember the day really clearly. I've even still got the book that they gave us on the day. And I was just like mind blown, because one of the next speakers coming up was an accountant. And like, I was like, oh, this is going to be a bit of a yawn fest. And I just did not have any idea the capacity of what I could do with what I was creating for myself. You know, withdrawing equity, adding value, you know, what I could actually charge from a taxation viewpoint. All of these things was just this, like, you know, this light struck down from the sky and hit the top of my head. And I'm like, oh, we've got all this equity in these properties that we're starting to accrue, and this is how we're going to build our portfolio. And I literally couldn't sleep that night. It was phenomenal. So every time this group of property women would come around to Sydney quarterly, so to speak, I think, you know, approximately, I put my hand up. I wound up doing some, you know, free crewing for them, and just, you know, being there to help and support, trained to become a buyer's agent. All of a sudden, I'm actually speaking on their stage, which is obviously another way for me to grow my business. And by 2015, the three directors had basically had enough, and they were ready to sort of go their separate ways. And they called me and said, hey, what do you think about you buying the business? You know, you're a natural affiliation with it. And, you know, I did.
Wow. And so what does that look like today? What does the business sort of entail? Is it series of events, mentorship? How does it kind of work?
So back then it was very much, you know, those live events, which obviously has taken a massive shift over time. There was a membership as well, where they're sending things out. So very much more of a manual sort of process than now at the systemized digital era is here. And so we do webinars, a lot of education. I now have a course on there called the Buyer's Advantage. And so that's a really affordable opportunity for you to be speaking to a buyer's agent one-on-one, or not one-on-one, sorry, I should say one-to-many in a Zoom environment, but you can actually contact me privately and send me your questions. And it allows you to get the access to my brain, my experience, leverage off the professionals that, you know, people who don't know where do I find a solicitor? Well, how much do I charge? What do I even do to get started in property investing? How do I work out the yield of a property? You know, how can I look at RP data and have a look at what the value is? And so this is all the support that we provide, but it's super digestible and affordable for people who are just starting out in the industry, because the people who really need the buyer's agent support, first-time buyers or first-time investors, a lot of the time they really don't have necessarily the budget to use our services, but they really need our support. And that's the reason Property Women morphed into this, you know, having this course called the Buyer's Advantage.
And so what is the number one question? Because I can imagine the number one question I'd want to ask is, where should I buy in Australia? It's going to be a great investment.
Oh, I get asked some really unusual questions, and I don't mean to. Like just recently, one of our students asked me, but what stage do I pay the solicitor? You know, like these are just the fundamental questions, like what's the process? And there's not necessarily, it's not a real, buying property is not always a black and white. It's a very gray. Like there's so many variables. And even now, like I'll do deals and go, that was weird, or that was odd, or that contract was kooky. People don't recognize that they can ask for things to be fixed before they actually settle on a property. So we just settled on an off-market dual key property for a client of ours. And something came up in the Pest and Building report that needed fixing. So I asked, could they fix it on on their time and dime before settlement, and they said yes. So my client didn't have to deal with it, and we proceeded to sale. And people don't recognize they need to do it. They can do a pre-settle. They should do a pre-settlement inspection. So I've been to pre-settlement inspections when a vacating tenant has like left junk, and I'm not kidding, like from the front, like the letterbox to the back gate, including the inner machinations of a piano in the backyard. Like it was just chaos. So all of a sudden I've got like a 2 p.m. settlement, and I have to organize withholding of funds, or we delay settlement, but we're not taking that property in its current condition, and my clients aren't going to pay for that cleanup. So other times these settlements, there's been water damage, especially in the heavy rains we've had in the last couple of years. So things like that you can ask for people to pay for the problems that you're seeing and facing. A lot of buyers don't recognize that. If the dishwasher doesn't work and it was an inclusion that it should have been working, that shouldn't be your cost to fix.
So, I mean, I've bought a couple of properties in my life so far, and it's such a buzz on settlement day. It's stressful, it's exciting, it's scary. Do you feel all those feels too, or are you really desensitized now?
For my clients, I love the victory for my clients. It's so exciting. It's so exciting. I reach out to them afterwards, and I keep saying, look, I'm still here. If you've got questions, you need a referral for a carpenter, or like as much as I can help you. Obviously, I don't know everyone in every single suburb of Australia, but I love checking in and saying, show me what the kitchen looks like now that you've, painted it, and all all that sort of stuff. So I really do get that joy and seeing people come to it. It's thrilling when our offer's accepted, but I've learnt the hard way. We don't celebrate until we've actually got all the contracts exchanged, So, nothing's over until it's all done, signed and delivered. But I love that. And I love nothing more when a client does give me a number that they're prepared to go to, and I can secure that property underneath that number. It's like, to me, it's a win. Of course, I love it. I really enjoy it. And I really apply a philosophy with buying property that if I'm not prepared to actually put my money on the table and buy in that area or that sort of property myself, I'm not going to tell my clients to go and do it. And there are some areas that a lot of investor activity, and I just think it's overloaded. It's just got a really poor trajectory, I feel, with no trees, no room in the backyard for pools. I just think it's going to have some real social issues as these young families come to a stage where there's a lot of teenagers in the area. And I don't want to but there are just a lot of people selling some really rubbish stock out there. And I'm very, very cautious of buying where there's great infrastructure. It's capital city based, or a really big, busy regional hub where there's a lot of different employment opportunities, and not just chasing yield, but you're also looking at growth when you're investing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's another reason why you should use a buyer's agent, because so many people get caught up in the emotion of it all, and they get emotionally attached to these properties, and they need someone to really come in objectively and say, this is a shit property, don't buy it, here's why. But if you don't have someone doing that, you can really go. And I've bought lemons in the past too. I bought a property in Port Stephens which had termites, and I was oh, it's fine, it's got a thermal camera, it'll be fine. And it wasn't fine, but I got so attached to the fact that you could see the ocean from the bedroom window. And if I had had a property agent at the time, buyer's agent, on my side, I would not have bought that and have wasted so much of my savings on that property. So yeah, it's another great reminder. Is there anything further you'd like to say before we wrap up, Jo, particularly in relation to women property investors? I know you specialize in, all buyers, not just women, but do you find that, it's a cliche question about women being underrepresented, but really is women investors still quite a rarity compared to male investors?
Oh, the girls have really stepped up since my days when I started, really stepped up. And I think single women are one of the bigger now percentage-wise of women, like people seeking out loans. However, having worked with, and I do work obviously with, a lot of couples, and I notice that men are more decisive when they come to spend money, and women can sometimes sit on their hands a little bit more and and potentially overanalyze a deal, which is where a buyer's agent is helpful, because I'm there to hold your hand and say to you, this makes sense. This is the reason why. Here's the local evidence and proof and the numbers, etc. So that's where I can help. But I do find that men are just a little bit more quick to make decisions, and women are a little bit more cautious. But the girls, we're stepping up, and we're doing it alone. And I bought my first property on my own, and at the time I was dating Greg. But I was my loan. I had the pre-approval, and it used to drive me insane because the agents would look at him and ask for his details. And I'm like, hey, no. This is me. I'm doing this for myself. And I think it's really important, if you're not in a relationship, you can do it on your own. I know it's hard. It definitely is hard. I mean, at the time I purchased, I started walking dogs outside of business hours to get extra money because I extended myself because I wanted in on the property market. So I literally did do an ad in the Yellow Pages, and started walking dogs outside of hours because that was my pocket money, so to speak. But I sacrificed holidays and buying $300 handbags and all the things that a lot of my friends were doing because I so desperately wanted to get on the ladder, So I think it's just really important to make the decision, have a look at your numbers. And if you want to get started, really speak to a broker, find a fantastic broker, and just see where your financial health is at, and get your taxes up to date. And you just start to put those marks in your calendar, and you can make it happen. It doesn't have to be where you live right now. You can invest outside of that area. Use a buyer's agent if you're not a local.
That's so inspiring, especially in today's day and age where, it's very tempting to want to go on the latest holiday, buy the latest clothes and shoes and handbags and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's really inspiring to hear that from you, sacrificing that back then, because you can fall into that trap. And you might require a bit of sacrifice now to be able to have the benefits later. So I love that. Thank you so much, Jo, for coming on to the podcast today. It's been incredible. I always love talking to you. And if you want to check out a bit of Jo's information, I'll put the links we've talked about today in the show notes. But yeah, thanks again, Jo, for coming on.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks so much, Jamie.